presence of something better. See, in the Bible, in Hebrew, peace is originally written as the word shalom, right? And shalom means complete, whole, nothing missing. And it's not just a noun in Hebrew, it's a verb too. So it's used interchangeably as nouns and verbs, right? So if you're going to say, for example, Solomon's temple was shalomed, if we would like to transliterate it to English, right? He completed the temple, right? You shalom your taxes. Makes it sound a little bit better, right? You, if something is out of alignment, it's out of shalom, right? It's broken down. It's not whole. It's not complete. A broken relationship can be lacking shalom, or it can be shalomed, right? It can be made complete. New Testament uses the word eirene. I think I'm saying it right. I'm not Greek, but I'm Hispanic, and they kind of roll their eyes, ours too, so I'll just go with it. And it has a very similar meaning, right? If two rival nations, and it's just like a lot deeper than we understand peace, right? If two rival nations shalom, it means not only do they stop fighting, but they start working together for each other's benefit. Like, we see a lot of ceasefires in our world, right? We see a lot of countries maybe stop the fighting, but rarely do we actually see them start building together. That's what shalom is. And a lot of times that's another word we've heard, right? And we're accustomed to it. And it kind of takes like a miraculous intervention to like wake us up sometimes from the sleep, especially among the Christmas season, and like really narrow in and zoom in on like what the depth of this story actually is. So like 2 or 3 weeks ago, Jared invited me and Joni to a concert, a Christmas concert. Now, I'm not the Christmas nut. I'm the like sensible kind of like, okay, Christmas is cool, but we started after Thanksgiving. And I'll play Christmas music. I like to sing Christmas music. I don't know that I'd actually go to a concert, a Christmas concert, right? And I know who Michael W. Smith is. And anyone here know who Michael W. Smith is? Yeah, none of the middle schoolers or high schoolers knew. Just saying. Y'all are like college age, right? So y'all know. Yeah, exactly. And I don't know that I would have gone to see the concert had like I just saw like an ad for it, and Jared's like, "Let's go," and Joni was like, "Let's go," and I was like, "Let's go." What? No kids? Yes. It's a date. And we're there, and they're singing some Christmas songs, and some of them are about Santa, and some of them are about this, and then they start singing In Excelsis Deo, right? The Gloria song, right? And we hear it every Christmas. And I'm sitting there, and I just become like, and I'm not a super emotional person, but I'm sitting there, and I just like felt like my throat getting tight. I felt my eyes getting puffy. And I was like, there's got to be a cat here somewhere, right? And I was just overwhelmed by the power of this song that I've heard so many times, and just glorifying God, and like just watching these musicians do what they were created to do and do it so beautifully. And just, I was like, man, I've been missing the whole point of this song. I'm missing the point of like most Christmas songs. Then that also was like before Thanksgiving, so there was an inner turmoil inside, right? Like I would find myself kind of humming the Christmas tunes and then be like, oh, wait, not yet, gotta wait, hold. A lot of times around Christmas, we become Ricky Bobbies. And it's about like a dear 8-pound, 6-ounce newborn infant Jesus who doesn't even know a word yet. But then actually he says something pretty interesting. I never thought I'd be preaching with Ricky Bobby in it. A little infant so cuddly, but still omnipotent. If you just take that last line, you can create a message out of that. But a lot of times that's what we do. We just we see the baby in the manger and it's beautiful, it's cute, it's peaceful, but we forget everything that was around it. And we forget that baby was little and cute and cuddly, but also the king of the world. Also the king of peace, the Prince of Peace, who at his arrival, in the middle of chaos, in the middle of what could be described as probably the worst time in humanity, because for 400 years God had not spoken. I can't imagine it going for longer than that. He arrives in the middle of that chaos. Little cute baby, but omnipotent. The Prince of Shalom. Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. The Prince of Shalom, you might say. See, true peace is more than just the absence of war. It means restoring what was broken. That relationship between humanity and God was broken. He comes to shalom that, right? He comes to repair that relationship that was broken. Let's turn to Ephesians 2:14. Ephesians 2:14, for he himself is our shalom, our peace, who has made us both one and has broken down in his flesh the dividing wall of hostility. This baby, this child that has been born, that we celebrate the birth of, he himself is our peace. Not only does he bring peace, he is peace. He incarnates peace. He himself is our peace, who has made us both one and has broken down his flesh, the dividing wall of hostility. He comes to make things right. He comes to make things new. He comes to put everything that was out of alignment, he brings it back to completion. He brings back that relationship. Luke 1:39. I think the fear of any person up here speaking is that y'all will find the before we do. Oh man, it's okay though. He's a pastor, so. Luke 1:39. In those days, Mary arose and went with haste into the hill country, to a town in Judah. As she entered the house of Zechariah and greeted Elizabeth, and when Elizabeth heard the greeting of Mary, the baby leaped in her womb, and Elizabeth was filled with the Holy Spirit. Okay, so Mary, it says, she rose and went with haste. Okay, so this is right after Mary, if you look right before here, this is right after Mary has been visited by the angel, the angel's telling her, you have been chosen, you will give birth to a baby, and he will be the Son of God. He will be holy. And she rose and went really fast, like pretty much right after that. Now, if you remember far back enough, there was no Twitter back then. There was no Facebook. There wasn't Morse code. There wasn't a way to get a message through fast, right? And so I'm here assuming she didn't know what was going on with Elizabeth, right? Now, Elizabeth, if you know the backstory, Elizabeth is or Zechariah and Elizabeth are her cousins, and they are about to have, or siblings. Is it cousins? It's cousins. And Elizabeth is pregnant. Now, it's lots of people get pregnant, right? There's no TV. Lots of people get pregnant. The problem is that Elizabeth, she's advanced in age. That's the biblical, beautiful way of saying she's old, right? She's old, she's barren, childless. She doesn't have a son or a daughter to call her own. Now, especially back then, if you were barren, if you weren't able to have kids, you were considered kind of like out of favor with God. It was considered kind of culturally that if you couldn't have kids, you must have done something wrong to deserve not having kids. You must be incomplete. You must be lacking what? Shalom. Right? And so she runs back to where Elizabeth is and where her husband Zechariah are. And Elizabeth hears the greeting, verse 41, and when Elizabeth heard the greeting of Mary, what do you think that greeting was? Hey, dude, right? No, like their greeting back then was shalom. Shalom, peace be to you. And what happens with Elizabeth? What happens with Elizabeth's baby, who, by my assumption, Mary doesn't even know that she's carrying? Baby leaps for joy, or leaps in her womb. Mary becomes full of the Spirit. Now again, like this is before the Pentecost. This is before the Spirit has come into the earth, before Jesus has left the Spirit as the counselor, as peace for us. And she receives shalom. She receives completion, receives the Spirit. The baby leapt in her womb, and Elizabeth was filled with the Holy Spirit. I didn't put it on screen, but it continues and says, and she, Elizabeth, exclaimed with a loud cry, "Blessed are you among women, and blessed is the fruit of your womb." Now, again, it's not like Mary's Facebook status says, "I'm expecting. It's going to be a boy." She saw like the gender reveal party and all that. Sheep come out like tinted in blue, right? That'd be an epic reveal party. Yet she does say, "Blessed are you among women. Blessed is the fruit of your womb." She's speaking from the Spirit in her. She's speaking from the shalom in her. She's speaking because she's been completed. Jesus is born. He grows up. Now let me ask you, can you imagine Jesus being frantic about anything? Like kind of picture this. Picture the storm, right? But instead of Jesus sleeping in the bottom of the boat, he's like waking up the disciples. He's like, "Hey, y'all are fishermen, right? We're gonna die, right? Like, oh, save me. Where's the life jacket?" Right? Like that's not Jesus, right? What's he doing? He's asleep in the bottom of the boat. Can you imagine Jesus at like the cliffside with the multitude of people, and like they're trying to kill him? I don't know if you've heard that story, but Jesus is like had said something. He was always saying stuff that kind of rubbed the wrong people the wrong way. And they want to kill him, and they're advancing onto him on a cliff. Like, talk about being behind, like between the wall and a hard place, right? He's got nowhere to go. Can you imagine Jesus just like losing it and being like, "Oh, I'm going to die. Like, move, move, move." Or like getting his like disciples to act like bouncers for him. I mean, at least in the version of the Message, like Peter's got some buff arms. Like he could probably do it. I know about Matthew. No, what does he do? He just slips right on through the crowd. Just walks. Calm. Peaceful. Can you imagine a Jesus that when they come to take him prisoner, he tells his disciples to fight for him and to cut people's ears off and make sure they fight to their death because he's afraid, because he's not full of peace? No, he's at peace. He tells Peter, no, this had to happen. Isaiah 26:3. Isaiah 26:3. I repeat it so that I can find it. You keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on you because he trusts in you. Whose mind is stayed on you. Jared talked about it a little bit last week, about just being in the waiting, in the quiet. Like again, we live in a time where like the last thing we really have is quiet and waiting. We're a now, like we're an Amazon Prime generation. Like we want things immediately. And it says, you keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on you, whose mind just rests on you because he trusts in you. I was listening to a sermon by John Mark Comer, and he was talking about how he's trying to just reformat his mind into whenever there's a lull in his life, instead of pulling out his phone or instead of like thinking about like what the stock market is doing, to just put his mind on like God. Place his mind on Jesus, on what he has done, on his story and what he's doing. Unfortunately, most of us, especially me, anytime I get a break, like instinctively, like my phone goes out. I actually don't even have Instagram and Facebook on my like home page, just to like make sure I don't. But like it's almost like mind, like just like I even have it like in black and white, so that it takes me a minute to like find the color and like like because our natural state just wants to kind of be occupied. It wants to be like fed. It wants to be. We just want and need, like we're needy people. Instead of stopping, staying, and waiting, and putting our mind on God and what he has in his story, what if that's more what peace looks like? On just placing our mind, on staying our mind. I love the word that Isaiah uses here. Our mind is stayed on you. He could have used resting, he could have used paused, but just stayed. Like it's just stayed, just seems like it just like doesn't move. It's just in place. Stayed on you. I think it's important to understand that we're never going to experience God's rest if we're waiting for circumstances to change. If our peace depends on what's going on around us, then that's not really God's peace. That's just a brief state of living. Now, we all experience brief states of living when we're at peace. Like, example, like when the kids are asleep, peace, right? When the puppy's asleep, peace. When there's finally no traffic on the Don Holt, peace. Y'all just sighed too. But what if our peace doesn't depend on the lack of traffic on Don Holt? What if our peace doesn't depend on what the kids are doing or what the government's doing or what like everything around us is like? There's so many moving parts. Y'all just stop and think of all the moving parts around you. Like, it's wild. There's so many moving parts. Like my Christmas tree is on like a Alexa or whatever. Like that's crazy. Like it's crazy that like I'm so lazy I don't like plug in and unplug the tree. I spent $5 to be able to tell a computer Christmas tree on, Christmas tree off. Right? I don't want to bend over and like like just. Because that type of peace, it's ephemeral. It doesn't last. If we base our life or if we base our appreciation or what we know about peace, if our expectation is what the world offers as peace, we're going to be disappointed time and time and time again. John 14:27. Now this is Jesus speaking. So if Jesus is speaking, we know it's going to be true, and we know it's We know it to be something that's going to happen in our lives. We know it to be a promise to us, as we do with the rest of God's word here. In John 16:27, you've probably heard this verse before. Sorry, 14:27. The next one is 16:24. Or what? 14:27. Peace I leave with you. My peace I give to you. Okay, so pause right there. Peace I leave with you. My peace I give to you. Let me emphasize that part again. Peace I leave with you. My peace I give to you. Then it continues and says, not as the world gives do I give to you. Let your hearts not be troubled, neither let them be afraid. So what's Jesus saying here? He says, I'm giving you my peace. It's not going to look like what the world offers. It's not going to be instant. It's not going to be ephemeral. The Mexican dude trying to use big words. It's not going to work. It's going to be different. It's going to be not as the world sees it. So what's God's peace? What's Jesus' peace going to look like? It's going to look like having that calmness and having that trust. Just as Jesus did in those difficult moments, in those moments where like everyone else would have been running for their lives, he's asleep in the bottom of the boat. That's the kind of peace that Jesus offers to us. It's not that there's going to be absence of war, or absence of difficulty, or absence of hurt and pain and solitude. It's going to be that during those moments, we're going to be able to experience a peace that just doesn't make sense. Where is this coming from? It just doesn't make sense that I have peace right now. Jared shared last week, Psalm 33:20. He said, our soul waits for the Lord. He is our help. He is our shield. That's the kind of peace that God is offering us. It's a peace that we sit in, that we wait in, that we stand in the middle of the chaos that's around us. And we just know that it's going to be okay. It's that odd peace, like in Gladiator, when there's like a big fight scene and there's like instrumental music. Very, very peaceful. Everyone's like destroying each other, but there's kind of like this weird peace music. Like, my peace I leave with you. I give to you. Not as the world gives do I give to you. Let your hearts not be troubled, neither let them be afraid. So my family growing up, we of course lived in Nicaragua, and my dad loved driving. We drove everywhere. A, because it's a lot cheaper than flying. B, because there was like 7 of us. Tickets from Nicaragua to like Mexico or the United States, like incredibly expensive. So we would drive, and so we would drive, like it wasn't a big deal to drive from Nicaragua to Mexico City. It's only 3 days, right? Just a piece of cake. And of course, there's no highways, right, in Central America. Like there are paved roads, right? Like sometimes we go the other extreme. Actually, though, like growing up in the early years, there was like stretches of paved roads and stretches where they weren't really paved and no GPS. So don't get me started. I've got stories. Our car burnt once. No AC. This trip, though, we did have AC. We were in a fairly nice vehicle that my dad had managed to buy. And we were driving from Nicaragua to Niagara Falls. Just like, yeah. Y'all haven't driven from Nicaragua to Niagara Falls? What? I thought every, American family had to do that. Yeah, I know, it sounds crazy. So we drove from Nicaragua to Niagara Falls. It took us a minute. We actually did it in about 3 months. We were on a sabbatical. We needed it. But as we were going through Guatemala, so we went through Honduras, El Salvador, entered into Guatemala. You have like a very accurate representation of our world right there. You can see like the geographical contours and everything. In Guatemala, we got shot at. Like, it was dark. We were watching the end of Twilight, the movie, you know. And I remember I was sitting behind my dad, like he was driving, and I see some like flashes and hear some pops. And my brain doesn't really register what's going on. And when it does, then I'm like, everybody down or something. And like I see my mom slinking to her seat, and I was just hoping she was doing that on purpose. And he turned us around, and like, it was the weirdest, like, I still like see it in slow motion in my brain. Like, they cut us off. It was a red pickup. Guys are standing in front of the pickup and off the back of the pickup, pointing their guns at us, shooting several shots. And my dad goes backwards into a ditch, remembers he's got four-wheel drive, like we're completely exposed on the side, and they kind of like freeze, like they stop shooting. They just stand there, and we turn around and go the other way. Just like, I know y'all are like, he's making this up. I'm not. I have some pictures actually to prove. There we go. Now, mind you, they shot several times. Only 2 of them actually hit the vehicle. One of them hit like right where the radiator is. But if you see right down there, it like hit the radiator support. Like the bullet was actually lodged there still. We took it out, or it fell off. The other one went through one of the headlights into like the wheel well and just like managed to bounce off the wheel. Like, we didn't get a punctured tire. Again, like, I'm seeing this. They're pointing at the windshield. Like, they're not shooting to, like, you don't shoot at a vehicle to scare people. You shoot to, you know. And we go to the police. They don't really believe us until we show them the bullet holes, because usually when something like that happens, there's no one to tell the story. And so they offer some protection first. They offer a cop car, and we don't. It's like, we've heard stories. We don't know if they're in on it. It's late at night. We don't want to continue, so we pull into a roadside motel, and like, that would be shady any day of the week. But right after that, there's a cop car outside. Again, didn't really make us feel any safer. And I'm thinking, how am I going to sleep? And I slept. Now, my wife might tell you it's because I'm a really deep sleeper, and I am a very deep sleeper. But most people wouldn't be able to sleep after that. And like, I do remember most of my family, we slept pretty good. We experienced some weird peace through it that we just couldn't explain. There was like this, everything that had gone around us, and we just felt at peace. The next day, we kept on driving. We reached Mexico. And most of you are saying, well, that doesn't really help anything. But we felt more safe because at least like we had Mexican papers and everything, dual citizenship and everything. But I look back and I remember why I was feeling that peace. It's because I'd learned that's what peace felt like, because just 3 months earlier, my brother had died in a car wreck. And in the pain, in the suffering, in the loss, we had peace. God didn't come and take away, he didn't come take away the suffering. He didn't come take away the difficulty of it. He didn't undo what was already done. But me and my family, we had this sensation of wholeness. We were missing a huge part of us, but we were whole. And I know it doesn't make sense. Because it doesn't. Probably because it was a third world country. This happened in Nicaragua. Like, the most incredible part of that is that when it happened, all of us were allowed into the morgue, half our church. And there were other dead bodies. And we started worshiping. I don't remember who started. We were surrounded by death. But we were engulfed in peace. And it didn't make sense. It still doesn't make sense. But when God says, when Jesus said, peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you, not as the world gives, I give you. Like, that's what he's talking about. That's the peace that he's talking about, a peace that just makes no sense. Peace that stays with you as you stay in him. As your mind stays in him, that peace just engulfs you. I'll end with this, John 16:33. Literally a couple pages over from this. He says, I have said these things to you, that in me you may have peace. In the world, you will. Now, it doesn't say you may. It doesn't say you might. It says, in the world, you will have tribulation. But take heart. I have overcome the world. See, our peace, again, doesn't lie in what's going on around us. Our peace lies in this promise. Peace lies in that promise. That he has overcome the world. Y'all can come up. That we can take heart, and I just love that verbiage here. It actually, sometimes there's verses that in Spanish just sound better, but like nothing quite like captures it like take heart. But take heart. I've overcome the world. See, peace is about taking heart. That he has overcome. That it doesn't matter what's around us, that it doesn't matter what we're exposed to. The Prince of Peace has been born. He has been given to us. We're not waiting for him anymore because he has already arrived. But we can be still. But we can wait in trust, in hope, in peace. That what we're experiencing now, that's the ephemeral part. The trial and the tribulation that we're experiencing now, that's the part that will fade away. There will be a new world and a new heaven where there will be no sorrow, there will be no pain, there will be no tribulation. And that will be eternal. God's peace will be and is eternal. So as we walk in this time of Christmas and we see that word peace and we hear the songs about peace and we light the candle that signifies peace, let it sink in that it's more than just a word, it's more than just a symbol. It's a way of life, it's a promise, and it's eternal. Would you stand? God, thank you for your promises. Thank you for your word. Thank you that even though our minds struggle to comprehend, you've given us hearts that can know. God, I ask you that today that you would implant in our hearts and that we would treasure in our hearts, just like Mary went and treasured everything that happened to her in the celebration of the coming of your Son, that she treasured, that we would treasure this, that we would treasure your hope, that we would treasure your peace, that we would abide in you, and that we would experience your peace, the one that doesn't make sense, and the one that doesn't just fleet away. We thank you. Thank you for your Son, Jesus. Amen.